I paid $13,000 for sister's wedding only to have her call me lonely selfish at Christmas. It's so funny because she didn't know that her husband was cheating with. When I sold my house last summer, it was supposed to be a fresh start. I was newly divorced, single again at 34, and finally had some financial breathing room. I thought I'd use the money to figure out my next step, maybe travel, invest in a small business, or even go back to school. But apparently my family had other plans. It started with my parents. They came over for coffee one morning, and after a few minutes of small talk, Mom started laying the groundwork. "You know how much your sister Ashley has always dreamed of having a beautiful wedding," she began. Dad chimed in. "Things are tight for her, and we can't help as much as we'd like." I knew where this was going. Ashley's fiancé, Brad, had been hinting for weeks that he was trying so hard to give her the wedding she deserves. At first, I brushed it off as a guy venting about wedding stress. But as it turned out, he wasn't venting. He was planting seeds. When Ashley called me herself, it was a full-blown campaign. She went on about how she couldn't imagine walking down the aisle without the perfect venue, the perfect dress, the perfect everything. She made it clear that Brad was doing his best, but weddings are just so expensive. And then she dropped the line that hit like a guilt-trip missile. "I was just thinking, since you're not tied down with a family, maybe you could help." The worst part? They all knew I had money from selling my house. They made it sound like it was just sitting there collecting dust, and how could I say no to my little sister? Brad even called me himself a few days later. He said, "Look, man, I know it's a lot to ask, but this is the only way I can show Ashley that I'm serious about our future. She's been through so much, and I want her to feel like a queen on our wedding day." I don't know why I gave in. Maybe I didn't want to be the bad guy. Maybe I was still trying to prove to myself and to her that I wasn't the selfish, bitter ex-husband they seemed to think I'd become. So I paid $13,000. And frankly, the wedding was beautiful. Ashley looked stunning. Brad cried during his vows. Everyone was dancing like it was the best night of their lives. And for a brief moment, I thought maybe it was worth it. Little did I know, the payoff for my generosity was yet to come. It just wasn't the kind I was expecting. After the wedding, things were surprisingly quiet. Ashley and Brad went on their honeymoon, and my parents were suddenly full of praise. "You really saved the day," my mother said more than once. My dad even joked that Ashley would probably name her first child after me in gratitude. It felt good for a while. But then, as the weeks went by, I noticed something. The calls and texts started to slow down. The heartfelt thanks turned into casual mentions. By December, the whole thing felt like a distant memory to them, anyway. Christmas that year was at my parents' house. It was a big deal because Ashley and Brad had just returned from their honeymoon, and everyone wanted to hear about it. My mom went all out: turkey, ham, mashed potatoes, the works. It was supposed to be a good time. The conversation started out light, funny stories about the wedding, a few honeymoon highlights, and a lot of Brad talking about how relaxing in the Maldives was just what we needed. I kept to myself for the most part, sipping my drink and letting them talk. Then, out of nowhere, Ashley turned the focus to me. "So how's the single life treating you?" she asked with a grin. I shrugged. "It's fine. Quiet, I guess." "Well, it must be really quiet," she said, leaning in. "I mean, no wife, no kids, not even a girlfriend?" "You're like the perfect candidate for one of those Hallmark movies where the guy ends up adopting a dog to avoid loneliness." The table chuckled, but I felt my stomach tighten. She wasn't just teasing, she was poking at something deeper. "Maybe I'm just waiting for the right person," I said, trying to deflect. "Oh, come on," she laughed. "You're not getting any younger. And let's face it, your track record isn't great. Maybe some people just aren't cut out for relationships." The room fell silent. My mom looked at her, but Ashley just shrugged like it was no big deal. Something inside me snapped. I put down my glass and looked straight at her. "You're awfully smug for someone whose husband spends a lot of time with the neighbor." The silence that followed was so thick you could hear a pin drop. Ashley's face froze and Brad's eyes went wide. "What the hell are you talking about?" he said, his voice sharp. I didn't back down. "You think it's a secret? Brad and Jennifer from 3 doors down have been awfully friendly while you were busy planning your fairy tale wedding." Ashley turned to Brad, her face pale. "Is he serious? Tell me he's lying." Brad stammered, but didn't deny it. That's when the screaming started. It was chaos at the table. Ashley was firing questions at Brad faster than he could answer, her voice getting louder with each one. Brad, for his part, was nervous but not exactly convincing. "It's not what you think," he kept repeating, which is the universal slogan for someone who's been caught. My parents looked like they didn't know whether to jump in or stay out. My mom kept looking at me, silently begging me to calm things down, but I was done playing peacemaker. Ashley finally turned to me, her face flushed. "How do you even know this? Who told you? Does it matter?" I said. "I live a few blocks away. People talk. I've seen his car parked outside her house late at night more than once. But sure, maybe they were just swapping cookie recipes." Brad slammed his hand down on the table. "You're out of line. This is between me and Ashley." "Oh, is it?" I shot back. "Because the last time I checked, you were begging me to finance your wedding so you could prove your love. And now look at you." At that moment, Ashley broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she cried. "How could you do this to me?" Brad tried to reach for her, but she pushed his hand away. "I gave up everything for you." "Gave up what?" Brad snapped, his tone shifting from defensive to offensive. "You're impossible to live with, Ashley. You're controlling, you nitpick over every little thing, and sometimes I just needed to breathe." The whole room froze. Even I hadn't expected him to say that. Ashley's crying turned into full-blown sobbing. She got up from the table, knocking over her wine glass, and stormed out of the dining room. Brad sat there with his head in his hands, mumbling something about how he didn't mean it. And me? I got up, grabbed my coat and said, "Merry Christmas, everybody." As I walked out the door, I heard my dad yell after me, "You didn't have to ruin the whole night." I turned around halfway out the door and said, "Ruin the night? I just saved it from a lifetime of that guy's crap. You're welcome." Then I walked out into the cold December air, angry but strangely relieved. But the night wasn't over. As I was getting into my car, the door slammed open and Brad came running out. "Hey!" he yelled, jogging over to me. I rolled my eyes. "What now?" He caught up to me, out of breath. "Why did you do that? You didn't have to ruin my life like that. Do you hate me that much?" I laughed bitterly. "You think this is about you? This is about Ashley. She didn't deserve what you did, and she certainly didn't deserve the way you dragged me into your mess. You should have thought about that before you started sneaking around with Jennifer." Brad looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he just mumbled, "You don't know what it's like." "Oh, I know exactly what it's like," I said. "And that's why I'm done playing nice." With that, I got in my car and drove away, leaving Brad standing in the driveway. I thought I'd said my piece. But when I got home, my phone started buzzing. First it was my mom. Then my dad. Then Ashley. I ignored them all. Then came the text from Brad. "You just couldn't keep your mouth shut, could you? I hope you're ready because this isn't over." At the time, I didn't know what he meant. But I was about to find out. The next morning, I woke up to 27 missed calls and a barrage of texts. My family group chat exploded with messages ranging from my mom begging me to call her, to Ashley accusing me of destroying her marriage, to Brad threatening me in vague but clearly unhinged ways. I ignored it all. Around noon, however, curiosity got the better of me and I decided to check Facebook. Sure enough, Ashley had posted one of her infamous rants. It was a long, rambling tirade about how some people can't stand to see others happy, and how family is supposed to support each other, not tear each other down. She didn't name me directly, but the comments made it obvious. My favorite was from my Aunt Susan, who wrote, "Wait, so your brother exposed your husband for cheating, and you're mad at him? Sounds like you're focusing on the wrong problem, honey." That made me smile. But the real shock came when I got a call from an unknown number. Normally I wouldn't answer it, but something told me to pick it up. "Hello?" There was a pause, then a familiar voice. "This is Jennifer." I almost dropped the phone. Jennifer, the neighbor. The one Brad had been sneaking around with. "What do you want?" I asked, bracing myself for some kind of confrontation. "I need to talk to you," she said. "In person." "Why would I do that?" "Because there's something you don't know," she said. "And it's about Brad. Believe me, you're going to want to hear this." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop that afternoon. I didn't tell anyone, not my family, not my friends. If she had something to say, I wanted to hear it first. When I walked into the cafe, Jennifer was already there, nervously stirring a cup of tea. She looked tired, as if she hadn't slept in days. I sat down across from her. "All right," I said. "What's so important?" She took a deep breath. "First of all, I'm sorry about everything. I never meant for things to get so messy." "Get to the point," I said. "Why are we here?" Jennifer hesitated, then leaned in closer. "Brad lied to everyone. Not just Ashley. Not just me. Everyone." "What do you mean?" "He's in debt. A lot of debt. Gambling, mostly. He owed money to some, let's just say, dangerous people. That's why he wanted to marry Ashley so badly. He needed her money, or rather her family's money, to cover his tracks." I blinked, trying to process what she said. "So you're saying he didn't even love her?" Jennifer shook her head. "I think he loved the idea of her. But no, not really. He used me too. Promised me all sorts of things, said he'd leave her once he got back on his feet. But it was all lies." My head was spinning. This guy hadn't just cheated on my sister, he'd tricked her into marrying him just to get himself out of trouble. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I'm tired of being his pawn," Jennifer said. "He's been stringing me along for months, and I'm sick of it. Ashley deserves to know the truth, and I thought you'd be the best person to tell her." I leaned back in my chair and took a long breath. "You realize this is going to blow everything up, right?" Jennifer nodded. "It already has. But somebody has to do the right thing." I didn't say anything for a while. Part of me wanted to just walk away, let Ashley figure it out on her own. But the other part of me knew that if I didn't step up, Brad would continue to get away with it. So I made a decision. I called Ashley that night and told her we had to talk. In person. When I showed up at her house, she was still a mess from the night before, eyes puffy, tissues everywhere. She barely looked at me when she opened the door. "What do you want?" she asked. I walked in and said, "We need to talk about Brad. And you're not going to like what I have to say." When I finished, Ashley was no longer crying. She was seething. And then she told me something I hadn't expected. "You think this is bad?" she said, her voice deep and cold. "Wait till you find out what Brad said about you behind your back." I froze. "What are you talking about?" Ashley crossed her arms. "Let's just say he's been busy. You're not the only one he's dragged into his mess." Before I could ask her to explain, there was a knock at the door. It was Brad. Ashley froze when she saw Brad standing on her porch. I don't know if she was expecting him or if his timing was just that perfect, but the tension in the air was suffocating. "Can I come in?" Brad asked, his tone calm, almost too calm. Ashley didn't answer. She just stepped aside and let him in. He looked at me, his face twitching with barely contained anger. "Oh, great. You're here," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Figures." I stayed where I was, leaning against the wall. "Good to see you too, Brad. What's this about?" Brad ignored me and turned to Ashley. "Look, I know you're upset. I get it. But you can't believe everything your brother says. He has a grudge against me. He always has." Ashley glared at him. Don't even try it, Brad. I've heard enough. From him? Brad pointed at me, his voice rising. Of course he's going to make me out to be the bad guy. He's been bitter ever since his wife left him. Misery loves company, right? That hit a nerve, but I kept my cool. This isn't about me, Brad. It's about you lying to her. And cheating on her. And oh yeah, using her to cover your gambling debts. Ashley's head snapped toward me. You told him about the debts? I blinked. What? No. Jennifer told me. Brad froze, the color draining from his face. Jennifer? He stammered. Yeah, I said. Your little sidekick. She's done covering for you, by the way. And she's done with you. Brad looked like a cornered animal. She's lying, he said quickly. She's just trying to ruin my life because I broke up with her. Cut the crap, Brad. Ashley snapped. How much do you owe? And don't even think about lying to me. Brad hesitated, and for a second I thought he was trying to weasel his way out of it. But then he sighed and muttered, about 60 grand. Ashley's face went pale. 60 grand? She repeated, her voice shaking. And you were going to use my money to pay it off? It's not like that, Brad said, his voice now pleading. I was trying to make things right. I wanted to get back on track for us. For us? Ashley laughed bitterly. You mean for you. Everything you've done has been for you. The room fell silent, the weight of his lies sinking in. Brad looked between us, his face a mixture of despair and anger. Finally, he turned to me. This is your fault. He spat. If you just kept your mouth shut, Dash. I cut him off. No, Brad. This is your fault. You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it. Ashley stepped forward, her voice cold and calm. We're done, Brad. I'm calling a lawyer tomorrow. And don't think for a second that you're going to get another dime out of me. Brad opened his mouth to argue, but Ashley raised her hand and cut him off. Get out. For a moment it looked like he was going to fight back. But then he grabbed his coat and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Ashley collapsed on the couch, her head in her hands. I sat down next to her, not knowing what to say. She finally looked up at me. I should have listened to you before. I shrugged. I didn't exactly handle it the best way. No, she said, shaking her head. You did what needed to be done. I just didn't want to see it. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of it all settling in. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Brad. Hope you're happy, hero. You're next. I showed it to Ashley and she frowned. What does that even mean? I don't know, I said. But something told me I was about to find out. After the chaos of that Christmas, things changed quickly. Ashley filed for divorce the very next week. She froze her accounts and began the long process of separating herself from Brad's financial mess. She wasn't in a good place, but she was determined, which was more than I'd ever seen her do before. Brad, meanwhile, was spiraling. He showed up at my house one night, drunk and angry, ranting about how I'd ruined his life. I told him to leave or I'd call the cops, and after some muttering, he stumbled off. That was the last time I saw him. A few weeks later, I heard he'd skipped town, leaving behind a trail of unpaid debts and burned bridges. Ashley surprised me, though. She called one night out of the blue and asked if I wanted to have dinner. When we met, she looked lighter somehow. She told me she'd moved into her own place, started therapy, and was making plans for her future. You were right, she said. I hate to admit it, but you saved me. It wasn't easy to hear that she needed saving, but I was glad she was finally figuring things out. As for me, I took the money I'd been sitting on and used it to buy a small condo downtown. I started focusing on myself, took up hobbies I'd always put off, and even adopted a dog, a scrappy little mutt named Bailey who somehow always makes my bad days better. Ashley and I are closer now than we've been in years. We still joke about that Christmas sometimes, but we don't bring up Brad much. He's just a reminder of how bad things got before they got better. In the end, the the loss of $13,000 and a quiet holiday wasn't the worst thing that ever happened. It brought us back together, and that's worth more than anything.